Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot, and welcome to the monthly thank you reading. So, this is a reading where I take a little bit of time to thank my viewers there are now more than 10,000 of you subscribed here on YouTube, which is just something that, as I mentioned yesterday, is far, far beyond what I ever anticipated with this channel. I just wanted to get the voice out there for those few, that handful that I knew needed to hear it. I had no idea how many of you there were. And I also had no idea how great you guys were going to be. So I knew that, through individuals that I had met just doing readings and things like that, that there were a lot of great people out there. But this has once again surpassed any expectations. So I just want to do a reading to say thank you, and it's going to be a State of the Union reading, just kind of what's happening right now, tied in with the rest of the readings, but it's going to have an extended reading that is basically I'm just going to pull the cards together and then I'm going to go into the extended reading. So there's no need to go over to Vimeo for it today. It's just free. It's just here to say thank you. So it'll be a general reading for this collective, as always. If it does resonate with you, then I would just say think about subscribing if you haven't already. And if you are just now tuning in, this may be an opportunity for you to get caught up by looking at some of the previous readings. See if there were any additional messages in there for you. So we'll go ahead and get started by looking at kind of that energetic and emotional backdrop, but that energy that's happening between the two of you right now. And it's right now as we're wrapping up December, as we're wrapping up 2023 as a calendar year. We've got the the Knight of Wands in reverse, and it really it feels like things starting to calm down a little bit, but not necessarily because they want to calm down. There's a forced calming of the energy happening here. It may seem a little bit like in somebody's world, they are being told to cease communication, where you guys have been having some communication and somebody doesn't like it. But that seems pretty specific and definitely not going to be everybody's situation. We have a Knight of Wands, though, that's talking about it not necessarily being well interpreted or properly interpreted. Keep in mind that we've still got a Mercury retrograde coming right now until about, I think, January 2nd is when it is over with. And we'll still have a little bit of that period around there as we get things right back. But at this point, be aware that it's entirely possible to have misunderstandings with people, but there is a sense of change in the energy, something that we've been seeing, something that I'm not at all surprised that we feel is kind of that change in the energy. We have, there has been a lot of change in the energy, a lot of moving and inflection point. Yesterday's reading, we noted that the full moon felt like a turning point in the energy. So even though you're coming to the end of certain cycles, there's momentum from within this cycle that helps to kind of move you into your next direction. Here we have the Nine of Wands. So here I feel like there is, this is probably the most backward looking Nine of Wands I've ever seen. And what I mean by that is it's looking to see, so Nine of Wands is about resistance. It's about you putting up resistance or them putting up resistance to some of the things that they're learning, to some of the things maybe that you're learning, but this feels like very much a shared energy. Seems like if you are able to look back into the past a little bit, it should be helpful as far as understanding where you need to go. There are answers for you with regard to these walls that you may be putting up that you're going to find by looking into the past. It doesn't necessarily look like it's too far into the past, though. We've got a couple of cards here. So it looks like the High Priestess. High Priestess is all about listening to your intuition. So some of you will have varying levels of success in doing that. depending on how much you're able to quiet your mind. So if you're doing a frequent meditation and it's going pretty well, I feel like you're going to be able to access those messages that want to come to you. But I could also see them being pretty clouded if it's something that you're not accustomed to doing. And I know you guys are in different places with that across this collective. Some people have never really gotten into their meditation or their prayer, and some people are really into it and have been utilizing it quite a bit. This will be most beneficial to those who have been getting a little bit of practice or who would like to get a little practice. This will be a great time for that. With the Eight of Cups in the reverse here, it's a matter of, this is that returning feeling of an Eight of Cups. So it's coming back to something. And we saw using some of the energy of the past or memories from the past, but this has something to do with that. Coming back to a place that you've been in the past and being able to look at it with some with new eyes, honestly, that you have a very different perspective on things now. With the Fool in reverse, it looks like here's that opportunity that you're given that you decide not to jump into. But keep in mind, this may apply to more than just you. Your person may also be looking at some opportunities right now and deciding whether or not they want to jump into those. So it's a time of trying to decide if there's going to be vulnerability, a time of reflection with the Six of Swords here, looking into that past with the Six of Cups. Definitely a lot of that feeling of, let me see if I can use the past as a barometer by which I might figure out how to move forward. That has varying levels of use. So the problem is that in the past, just like with today, there is something that is sort of controlling the situation or taking a little control of the situation that frankly does not feel super welcome for that. So this is going to be that it's like a habit that they or you could both have some habit that you can't really figure out how to get away from. So it's the smoking, the drinking, the overthinking, the moving too quickly. There's something in here that pulls you in a direction that you would not ordinarily go in if you felt like you had more control over the situation. And the same is true of your person. So that can take many, many forms. It doesn't have to be a physical addiction, but it could be, it's definitely see what it means for you and for your person. But right now it's weighing a little bit heavily in the energy. And around the holidays, sometimes it's particularly tough to get out from under some of those things, particularly, and I mean, I'll use the drinking example. If you're looking to drink less or you're looking to stop drinking during the holidays is tough because you end up having times that a lot of parties, a lot of get-togethers, a lot of going out for drinks, a lot of invitations to do something like that where, you may have other times of the year that are a little bit more conducive to laying, putting that in on the back burner. With the Queen of Cups here, there's a lot of emotion that wants to come out and is making it out. So if you have had, I have it ringing in my emotional and energetic ears right now because it's not really sound. But it's this feeling of, if you have had communication from someone recently, look deeply to see if it was a vulnerable communication, if it was something that they would consider to be vulnerable by their standards. So that's not going to be for everybody, and I get that. But if you've had communication from your person, this is something that you may not have registered immediately, but that it may be there. You have the Page of Pentacles. There's a sense of learning. You have the Moon, and that one is a feeling of information, but not sufficient information to really draw a conclusion, and yet being in pretty much a position to do so. You also have the Justice card and the Queen of Pentacles in the reverse. Queen of Pentacles in the reverse is basically giving us some idea of that trajectory of the next direction of healing, and it applies to both of you. There's something in your self-worth or feeling of deservedness that needs to change, that needs to become improved for both of you. But I feel like it's going to do that as you start to establish this balance. And once again, balance is not always going to be the most comfortable thing to do. But in this case, it is definitely going to be something that helps you to, it helps to kind of get moving in a right direction, something that is ultimately going to feel much better. The moon, though, remember, this was about not necessarily having all the information when you need it. So it results in making decisions with less information than you might consider to be ideal. But with this Page of Pentacles, it's a sense of being open to the situation, being open to the learning, and putting things together. So it's about assimilation. So, okay, I love this one because with this Page of Pentacles in reverse, this person hasn't yet learned the lesson. They haven't yet made the connection. They haven't yet put this pentacle together in the way that it's going to. So it seems really obvious to you and me how this is going to work out, but they haven't yet done this. With it being here in the upright, this is somebody who does put it together, but more importantly, somebody who's open to the lesson and the transformation that comes from putting those pentacles together. Let's take a look a little bit more deeply into what you need to know right now. So you've got kind of a complex energetic backdrop, but it is not a bad one. It fits in with this sort of vulnerable feeling that is out there. But I still feel like even a small vulnerability, even though it is significant, doesn't necessarily move your relationship forward significantly. You got the Seven of Cups here. They don't know which direction to take this. So once again, they get in your purview. They get into kind of your energy. They get into a place where they have the opportunity to have the next word. They don't necessarily know what to say. So this is where you'll start to see a conversation that is falling off, or, you know, something that doesn't quite go anywhere. Two of Swords, a decision to make. So in yesterday's reading, one thing that we saw was that you may have a communication from someone who comes forward because they feel the urge to talk with you, but not because they're following the rules. So they may have some sort of third-party situation, just like we saw over here, somebody being asked to break off communication, or else there will be a greater issue. But I feel like, you know, basically what this kind of feels like they didn't necessarily play by the rules in reaching out to you, and now there's some form of them having to figure out what to do next. It's not necessarily having to deal with repercussions. That's really not everybody. But here's that Strength card that comes out in the reverse again. And so we saw that in yesterday's moon reading. That moon reading was, it was a specific reading around the moon, the full moon, but I got how connected it was with all the other readings that we've been getting. We saw a lot of the same cards, but we also, you know, we see some of that echoed today. And honestly, yesterday's reading felt like a continuation of the previous day. I'd be lying if I said this doesn't feel like a continuation of that. So it's kind of similar. I mean, and I'd be surprised otherwise, but it's energy that doesn't move too quickly as far as shifting in completely new directions, except for every once in a while it does, and then I wake up to a whole bunch of notes from you saying what just happened. In this case, we still have some fear winning out over the Strength, but just like yesterday, I don't get the sense that that is anything to worry about long term. That feels pretty temporary, and when it happens, it's more a matter of don't get too worried about the time frames, even if you don't talk very often, or if you don't talk at all. No need to get worried about the time frames. The healing is still happening underneath. Okay, so you've got the Four of Pentacles in the reverse, and it's a feeling of letting go of something, and it's what we were just kind of talking about. It's letting go of a need for things to happen at a certain time, and most importantly, for communication to happen a certain way at a certain time. With this Page of Cups, it has a feeling of sort of burying something very valuable and not communicating it. I also see this Tower down here that's in the reverse, and a feeling of not being able to move forward with something that's really important right now. And that's as far as that goes. I never know how many cards down it's going to go. For those of you who are curious and occasionally will write, like, how do you only use the top 3 cards and then know to put the rest of them away? Like, I don't know exactly what the answer to that is. I know that the cards look a certain way, and I know to breathe or to bring them in to the reading, and then if I put them back away, if they're supposed to be in, they'll come right back out. So I have faith in that, and if you watch it, you'll notice that they sometimes do. And I'll even sometimes say, I don't know if that's supposed to be there. I'll put it back, and, you know, it may or may not pop back out. So again, with the Four of Pentacles, this is about letting go of something, but it's about knowing that there's something to let go of. And it's about the process of doing it. So you're in the process of figuring out what's important and what's not. And one of the things that you're ultimately going to determine and learn is that the timing of your communication, because this is all about communication and burying something that's important, the timing of your communication is, whereas it is important, it is not necessarily the most important thing going on. It can be very easy to be impatient about that next communication, but yet it is that timing of it turns out not to be the most important thing that's happening there. And with this Tower card here in the reverse, I feel like that's a lot of not being ready to move into that next phase of things, but not for the usual reasons. It's not just because of the fears that are winning out across these strengths. Even with those fears, it's like there is this sense of just kind of being used to it at the moment. Like it's like a person who generally isn't afraid or is afraid of touching bugs, but for whatever reason today they're just not that concerned about it, or they've gotten to a point where they're fine with it. It's a fear that for whatever reason doesn't seem to be playing out on a particular day. I have the image of a person who plays in the waves in the water until after the sun starts to set, and the fear that they would usually have about going in after sunset is gone because the sun's already down and they've been there kind of the whole time. Little bit of that sense of come on in, the water's fine. I guess that's kind of with that Five of Cups. Usually I see that as a balancing of here taking the good with the bad. But in this case, I don't know that that's not there, but that's not the primary emotion that comes from it. It really is like being able to confront a fear that usually is difficult to confront. With the Seven of Pentacles, it's about really taking what you need, taking investment into yourself that is needed by you, comes from you, and that you have to ultimately feel like you deserve to bring it into you. And that's what I feel like happens there. With the Six of Cups, this is about being able to separate. So remember, you've got the Six of Cups in the upright over here. You've got the Eight of Cups in the reverse. And there's this feeling of, even with the Six of Swords over here, that feeling of kind of relying on the past for ideas about how to move forward in the future. That's not all you, but there is some element of you in that. With the Six of Cups in the reverse here, it's a reminder to you, and really to both of you, to make sure that you are treading new ground and making those decisions based on what's in front of you, based on what's behind you, because you're not the same person that you used to be. Partnerships may become a little bit difficult here in the not too distant future, but I think that it has, this isn't about partnerships between the two of you, except as it potentially relates to being able to do something. Like you may make a decision that you want to get to lunch, but for whatever reason, schedules just don't allow for it to happen quickly or something like that. It isn't partnership where the problem is between the two of you. It's something where it's outside of you and it's impacting you, but not necessarily with an intention of impacting you negatively. It is really like your schedule's not working out well. But it still creates a bit of an issue, or I feel like what it really constitutes is an opportunity for things to cool down that have gotten riled up during this Mercury retrograde. They have an opportunity to calm down as the plans are not being made. So there's this kind of magical time while you're in that after sunset water where you still feel kind of safe with it. But if something doesn't break relatively quickly within that time, then the moment will be lost. Here's the thing though, the moment isn't lost forever. It's really only lost temporarily. And both of you know it. Like there's something about this that I would say, even if you end up with this moment, and it doesn't pan out, I wouldn't get too worried about it. Like there may be a full sense of disappointment associated with it. But the thing that I would keep in mind here is how close you will have come to actually having made some sort of positive movement, some sort of move in the right direction. And really what that begets is additional energy to do that. So I feel like you're off to the races as we start out the year. I'll be super curious to understand. What I decided to do, and I talked about this a little bit at the end of the moon reading yesterday, I wanted to talk about what was headed your direction. I also wanted to talk about kind of what to do with what you are left with right now. So that is more or less the State of the Union, which is what we're doing. Then I decided that I would separate out the what to do, what is, where are you headed, but just the you energy and not specific to your soulmate. I'm going to do that one. I'm kind of putting that off to as close to the end of the year as I can. So I think I may do that one tomorrow since we have just a couple of days left. Because we're going to do an advice for the upcoming year, and we're also going to zoom in on January. But somewhere in here, we did get a special request to just kind of look at the energy that's coming your direction that is not necessarily specific to this soulmate, which I am more than happy to do. But we're doing the Soulmate State of the Union today, before we launch into that, because the end of the year is a time of really kind of looking back to see where you've been, to see where you're going. We've been watching your energy culminate in this really positive place, but now we see you kind of are hitting the ground running in 2024 in this energy. So let's get a feel for, given that, let's get a feel for where your focus ought to be before we launch into the extended. And when we launch into the extended, we're going to go more deeply into some of these emotions, because we can see that the emotions are kind of being cut off at the knees, but it's like your emotions and theirs are taking a little bit of a beating. But that's the reason that this Tower remains in the reverse. Still, though, with this beautiful opportunity here, I feel like there's more for us to just kind of look into. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of positivity and a lot of fast moving energy that goes into next year, even though there's this moment here where you have the opportunity to reflect and kind of slow down. So let's look at that first. Let's look at what's happening with you and where you can be reflecting given this situation that you've got right now, and just kind of the way that things are left right now. This is a special time in the month because, we knew there was going to be a lot of shifting and a lot of change, but it's always kind of interesting to hear that versus, getting to that shift and you kind of are feeling a little bit, war beaten and tired out, and also a little bit cathartic though after having gotten to where you're getting. So you've got the Emperor card in the reverse. Be careful that you don't take too much of an effort, make too much of an effort to kind of control things that are happening around you. That Emperor in reverse is I'm really tired. We were just talking about that. It's the I'm really tired response to the situation. Let's see what I just dropped. Okay, so I've got the Three of Cups. There may be a situation in your world that's going to require some additional attention. And then we've got the Queen of Cups here in the reverse, something that triggers in you a response not related to this person, but that your situation that you've had with this person, I feel like it helps to prepare you for it. So whereas this may be an opportunity, it does not immediately present as an opportunity. It looks like something that's disrupting your calm. Something that you are being forced to kind of deal with, but not specific to your person. Again, we have the Emperor in reverse. Your first response is to jump in and try and quell something, try and control something. It looks like it ends up not being the right thing to do. So be aware that you want to think that through before you jump in and try and quell and control something right away. There may be a better way. You've got a Five of Pentacles here in the reverse, which really feels a lot to me like this Queen of Cups in the reverse. That's all about being triggered. This is all about being afraid of being left behind, abandoned, betrayed, rejected in favor of something else. And we've got a Ten of Wands here that says, I'm just too tired to start all this right now. Feels like being left behind, or being broken up with, or being fired from a job, or laid off from a job, or something like that, that it doesn't have to be quite that dramatic, but it can be the reminder of something that is that dramatic, or the threat of something that is that dramatic, that's what it takes to sort of trigger you into a what if sort of situation. So this doesn't even have to actually happen. Okay, so we've got the Ace of Swords coming out here in the reverse first thing, and it is all about you need to be truly honest with yourself. Look at what the opportunities look like. Look at what the reality of the situation is. Go ahead and use that ability to control your situations around you that helps you look a certain way from an egoistic standpoint. Go ahead and take a look and use that to help you be self-aware enough to see what your situation is. So taking that job layoff situation, if you got laid off, how easily would you be able to go out and get another job right now? And this is your ability to look at that quite honestly. So I know it sounds a little bit like, King of Swords, but it's King of Cups because it is in that egoistic piece, and it's you using what you have to be able to answer that question a little bit more honestly and a little bit more openly with yourself. The Nine of Cups says, hold on, you may actually have some idea of what it is that you want, which puts you in a better position to both interpret this threat and to move forward in the event that the threat should happen to unfold. Queen of Wands shows you that this is all good news. So, so far, I don't actually see anything nasty unfolding. I see you being threatened or being reminded of something that has once unfolded that puts you on sort of a defensive, makes you realize that like you are being triggered into being put into on the defensive. With the Queen of Wands here, though, it's like you are at the ready to handle the situation and to just kind of deal with the situation. With the Eight of Swords, you realize that this is a drill, but even if it wasn't, you'd be in a good position to handle this. And with the Eight of Wands in the reverse, it's like the ability to slow down time. And, we want this. And with the Ten of Cups, so I feel like I went through this really quickly, and I'll kind of step back. With the Ten of Cups, you have this opportunity that comes to you. And this is not necessarily representative of the opportunity that's coming so much as how you would respond to it. So this has you responding well. This has you being essentially reminded of a time when you weren't given the full shake, or you weren't given the best opportunity, or you were betrayed, left behind, abandoned, laid off, broken up with, whatever it looks like for you. There's a sense of having been rejected or afraid of being rejected. You're afraid it's going to happen again, or you're afraid it's going to happen, and it triggers you. But in that triggering, there are some things that sort of happen that make you realize if you're able to take a good, honest look at the situation, you're actually going to be fine. You're actually going to be able to do just fine. And when you get into a tight spot, you're able to say, I'm going to be able to use an opportunity that comes my way very effectively. And you actually, so this does not require you to go through the difficult piece in order to learn that you would be fine in this situation. However, if it should happen for you, if you're some small portion of this collective that goes through that difficult time, you're also going to see relatively quickly that you're going to be fine with it, although that's not really the sense that I get here. So we're going to go into the extended. I don't know. We may want to take a look a little bit more at this opportunity, but I feel like this is a cut and dried sort of situation where you're going to be fine because of what you've built up, partially because of what you've been exposed to with this person, but I think also because of what you've been exposed to outside of and before them. We're going to look at when we get into the extended, though, and I'm just going to pull up the cards. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle them, and then I'm going to start the extended. So I'm just going to leave this running at the time, so you're going to see the whole thing happen. But when we get into this extended, what we're going to talk about is the emotion that's happening here. We're looking at a State of the Union, and we haven't got as much around emotion. We've got something around vulnerability. We've got something around learning of lessons and some very positive things happening here. We also see on your side that you recognize in yourself, this is an ability to be self-aware enough to be able to handle things well, but also to know that you'll be able to handle things well. With this situation with your person, there is a potential for them to actually be reaching out at this time, and to be reaching out with a more healed version of themselves, but not necessarily a completely healed version of themselves. I don't get the sense that they are being intentionally negative in any way, but I also do get the sense that some of it probably will look that way, or it won't look, it gets misinterpreted. There was definitely a sense of things potentially being misinterpreted here. But I feel like so there was the oracle card from the moon reading yesterday comes out, and it was, it was nothing happens as a result of this. And all I could see, like the very first thing that popped out for me was, it's not nothing happening. It's nothing happening as a result of whatever it was you thought you did that dropped the ball. It didn't have that impact. It did not have that ball dropping impact that you think that it may have had. So don't worry. This is bouncing back, and all I can see is the rich colors in this, and the sense of being able to move forward in a healthier, richer way, even though not necessarily a ton may change on the 3D side of things. So it would, in some cases, even being able to move forward in a way that you're able to have communications with this person, even if the relationship doesn't appear to grow or change otherwise terribly significantly. Take it slowly. So yeah, I'm going to pull these cards up and shuffle them, and then we will get in and do a little bit of an extended reading. It all kind of comes together. So sometimes when I do the shuffle and I do the reading, I've done all kinds of interesting things, because these are monthly, right? And so sometimes people will ask questions. Well, what does your space look like? Give us a walk around your table. Give us an idea of how you keep your decks and where they all are and things like that. And I've given you guys tours of my workspace, and I've given you guys, insight into why I do the readings in the first place and the things that I do. Somebody had asked a little while back if I would mind to kind of keep you apprised of what was happening in my own situation. And I feel like I kind of do that in the readings, although I try not to talk too much about myself. And what I will say is that the readings are, we're all on different timelines. The readings are not necessarily always going to hit home with everybody all at the same time, but I will say that they've been a little bit shocking to me lately, because they have hit home for me. There's definitely been a lot of the things that I've felt in the energy are the same things that have come out in these readings. And so hopefully for those of you where these readings resonate, we're all able to see benefits as you move into the healing phase of things. There's so much positivity to be had that is not necessarily associated with these relationships that we're a part of, but also is made possible because of the way these relationships have opened our eyes. So I would just say that that's where I'm at right now. Being able to be grateful for the situation because of the way that it's opened my eyes to so many things. Do I wish I could have a more meaningful relationship with my divine masculine? Definitely sometimes. Do I feel inclined to be thankful for what I have and for what I've experienced? Every day. Gratitude is absolutely one of those pieces that flows into my meditation on a daily basis, and this situation is a big piece of it. It's one of the things that I communicate to you and that I often see showing up in the cards. So with that, I feel like we're ready to kind of move into our next, into the extended. And so remember, what we wanted to start with in the extended was really around the emotions, particularly the emotions. Let's get a feel for what's happening on the emotional side for your person with regard to you and with regard to the situation. So we've got the Two of Cups in the reverse, feeling like there's kind of something in between, feeling like there's, something that they can't quite grasp, but it feels like it's in the way. It feels a little bit like a Two of Wands in reverse. And so remember, this is the extended. So we've just launched directly into the extended, and that's part of the way that I say thank you in these readings. In the end of the month thank you reading, this is how I like to do it, just to kind of give you guys a free extended. So we also have the Devil in reverse. Here's a person that is, even though they can feel that devil in the upright, even though they can feel that they're still kind of being controlled by something, or that something still owns part of their responses, they also are able to feel the progress. So they feel like they're a different person from who they were when the two of you first came together. That's a pretty strong feeling that they have. They also feel like you are, it's that got in on the ground floor feeling again. There's that feeling of having this strong connection with you that makes a huge difference even when you're not physically present with them. We have the Eight of Swords in the reverse. That's distinctly the air of not overthinking it. The Lover's card in the upright, which is definitely that, it's got that same feeling of the Two of Cups in the reverse, except for with the Lovers in the upright, it feels like they have some idea of what their recourse is or what they can do about it. And the Ace of Cups says that there's a lot of love here. So definitely feeling like there is an outrageous amount of love here, but not necessarily knowing exactly what to do with all of that. So I feel like this is kind of the basis for our reading right here. And I might just kind of keep the cards like this and go around this, because I feel like even though the Lovers and the Two of Cups are so much related, they still kind of have a little bit different of a message. So with the Lovers in the upright, it's like a realization when you wake up from a dream that this is just, it is what it is, and everything else that stands in its way it's like it's smoke that you should just be able to cut through. This Ace of Cups is all about the extreme amount of love, and the Eight of Swords in the reverse is really just not even overthinking it, just a recognition of it is what it is. This Temperance, they seem to feel like, is a balance that comes from within you. And the Devil in reverse so they're accrediting, in some way, they assume that you are related to these things that they're learning, which is not untrue, but they also feel like you're related to the comfort that they have when they learn these things. So that's where some of that Temperance comes in, and the Devil in the reverse is kind of some of that same emotion. The Two of Cups in the reverse, that has to do with not being able to have the union that they want at the time that they want it. It's about an inconvenience, and yet the Lover's card is kind of what feels like it's on the other end of that, saying, even though you don't feel like you have as much control over the situation, the reality is that this is just at the end of the rainbow, no matter how you cut it. It's a sense of inevitability. It feels a little bit like the Star card. So I mentioned earlier that the Devil is still very much, that Devil energy is still very much in there. And it has a lot to do with the life that they currently live and the way that they kind of go about it. So there's a sense with the Devil that they are locked into something. It is being locked into something that creates a stability, but because of the way that it is created, there's a lot of danger in that stability. Like nothing can really shift. It's a house of cards that falls very easily. And it's this Devil energy that kind of keeps them remembering that. So there's this feeling of them becoming aware of a force that holds everything together for them. And what it reminds me of is that force field that hangs around that third party. And when they get into that force field, all of a sudden they start to kind of think differently. They think differently about that Devil energy. They think a little bit differently about that convenience of the Four of Wands rather than the limitations of it. And they're able to kind of compartmentalize the love that they feel for you. But the thing is, they've got kind of this new perspective around that. So even when that force field impacts them, and it does still impact them, it's more a frame of reference for them than it is anything else. So instead of feeling like they just kind of go into that zombie realm of, now I just automatically am in this other world where I take things differently, like they're much more aware of the zombiness of this realm, and they use it as a reference point. So it's not quite the same. They are getting into a place where they're having a harder time hiding within the fantasy. So at this point, up to this point, there's been a lot of using fantasy to just kind of get by in the day-to-day, because there's been too much of a delay. Feels like there's been too much of a delay with the star in reverse to get to that inevitable. We've got the inevitable showing up here with the Lovers, and it's like, why won't it happen a little bit more quickly? There's a lot of desire for it to happen a little bit more quickly and kind of be populated into your world. But that's not necessarily the way it works, because there are other pieces that have to come in and happen ahead of that. But the feeling does not go away. So we have the Lovers here coming out of both decks, and this really strong feeling of inevitability, even though there is a delay in things coming to a head. There's not really any question as to whether that's really going to happen, though. I mean, this is a bond that, even if it does not result in union between the two of you in this life, it is such a got in on the ground floor sort of feeling. As time passes, this is going to become more and more evident to both of you, but it's just something that doesn't go away quickly. Doesn't go away ever, really, but there is wisdom that it continues to force you to go find. So one of the things that you kind of will get used to is this. It's that feeling of not knowing and having to go out and kind of learn something. But we saw with that Page of Pentacles in the first reading on, I was going to say on YouTube. I guess they're both on YouTube. But in that first reading, we saw the Page of Pentacles come out, and it had that sense of needing to put things together, beginning to put things together, being open to the learning process. This is something that does not change. And with this Hermit in reverse, it's really kind of a matter of, you just have to get used to the fact that it is an ongoing series of lessons. With the Seven of Wands, it has that feeling of you win some, you lose some. So even though there's a series of ongoing lessons, it's not necessarily always going the way that you would like for them to go. And I'm going to step over there and kind of close the door real quickly there. But I wanted to continue with my sentence. And this is that for this stack. Let's see what this was. So we've got the Hierophant in the reverse. Okay. There are elements of this relationship that cause them to lose their way a little bit. And it has everything to do with how scary they are. The concept of this inevitability that they feel in their emotions is terrifying to them, okay? The sense of feeling this much love, feeling this much desire. You've got Ace of Cups, like love coming in a whole new way, enabling them to feel love in a whole new way. And it's a little bit scary, I mean, it has caused them to run in the other direction in some cases. It has caused them to compartmentalize the situation with you. And not that they don't continue to do that, but that compartmentalization takes on, in this energy, it takes on a little bit different of a feeling, With the Magician, they realize that they kind of, this is why time ceases to matter quite as much, because they realize there's this inevitability and there's this kind of constant struggle about being able to allow something to move forward. With the Magician in the reverse, though, it's kind of like it's an eternal struggle. It's got the feeling of an eternal struggle, but even if the two of you come together in union, that struggle will continue. That's the nature of this relationship, okay? The nature of this relationship is that you are going to be continuing to learn. You are going to be continuing to find out the edges of your healing and to constantly be asked to more or less find new heights in your healing. So the Four of Swords here is a strong card of healing, but it's also rest and rejuvenation. There's not a ton of rest that comes in with this, even though there is a lot of healing. I would say that with the Moon here, this has that feeling, though, of, like we saw before, it was this feeling of making decisions, but not with all the information that you would ideally like to have as you're making a decision. Knight of Cups has you getting a little bit better with the communication. But what it really means in this context is it's about them being able to formulate their communication a little bit better, being able to formulate their love a little bit better. I feel like that's a little bit off in the distance, though. Their ability to feel this and to be able to formulate it happens in their head a long time before circumstances outside of their head, essentially. So between you and their third party situation, before all of that allows it to be formulated into words that you would be able to hear, and for them to be able to act on. So in some cases, they're able to say some things, but it's not necessarily super helpful because it comes out sounding like what we've been talking about for the last few days, an opportunity that looks wonderful, but maybe doesn't look like a great idea. Six of Cups has you evaluating what's happened in the past to try and decide what's going to go forward. But when this person evaluates what's happened in the past, they end up in that fantasy world again. And the problem with the fantasy world for them is that they're feeling a little bit like they can no longer escape into it as much as they'd like to. So here with the Six of Wands in the reverse, this has that strong sense of, I feel like I have, like when you push off from one side of the pool and you were going to hope to get all the way to the other side on top of the water without having to swim any strokes, and you look up and you realize you haven't made it all the way to the other side of the pool. That is what this feels like to me. Only it feels like they tried to thrust themselves across the pool with that energy of fantasy and were unable to get all the way to the other side because they looked up and the reality was kind of still staring them in the face, but not in a super fantastic, happy way. So the truth of it is there's still some momentum pushing them to the other side of the pool. There's still momentum kind of moving them to the right place. And it's honestly, if you look at the rest of this and you look at the way that it feels, it is inevitable momentum. This is not something that I am expecting to go away in the near future. I don't know that they would be or should be expecting it to go away in the near future, but it is definitely a sense of continuing in a direction that by this point they have to admit it to themselves, even if they are actively not admitting it to you. There is something here that doesn't seem like it wants to stop being persistent and doesn't want to go away. Nine of Cups, this is about understanding what it is that they want. So keep in mind that this is a person who spent a lot of time earlier in their life figuring out what it was that they truly wanted or what that they felt that they wanted. And they spent a lot of time going toward it. They've got their family trained, or the people around them have them trained to think about what it is that they want a certain way. And for them to suddenly make a shift in that is going to it makes a big difference to them psychologically as well as to the people around them. And so it's not something that gets done easily or taken lightly. And with this Nine of Cups, it's a matter of having to really kind of get to a place where they're capable of understanding, like we see with the Seven of Cups here, what are your options and what does it look like when you go to take them? Which of the options are mutually exclusive? What can be done together? Where can you have your cake and eat it too? Where can you not? Because, it's not necessarily a matter of having your cake and eating it too as much as it is for planning for as much cake as you were hoping for. With the Seven of Swords in the reverse, this is wonderful. This is the recognition that your person is starting to have that they can trust their own emotions. And some of them are farther down that path than others. So some of them look at this and say, okay, I'm able to trust my emotions and I understand this is what's happening with me. However, maybe I don't necessarily feel like I can tread this path yet. There are things in the way. There's something that's happening with my third party. There's something that's happening elsewhere in my life that impacts this, which is really all the third party energy is. That's why it's not always a person. It's not always a place. It can be work. It can be a family member. It can be an aunt who is very controlling within the family and would not want to see you go a certain direction or would not want to see them go a certain direction. We have the World card again, though. And with the World card, it's a matter of coming to the end of a cycle. Now, as we know, this is coming to the end of a cycle and basically using that as an inflection point to move off in a new direction. We saw a lot of that in yesterday's reading, a lot of turning point energy. I call it also inflection point energy, where it's not, you even have momentum off in another direction because of what you've learned here in the recent past. So this is, I feel like it's positive, and it looks like it's positive. You really reflect as positivity to this person. You are like, when they can remember a happiest moment or a happiest time, you are one of the moments that shows up for them, or maybe even several of the moments that show up for them. But they also don't quite know how to get to it, so there's a little bit of a breakdown, and it's one that seems to be becoming a little bit more evident to them as they start to get their minds around their emotions. When you look at somebody and you think of that person as your happiness, it can be pretty damaging to you to know that you're actively moving in a different direction, or that you've managed to keep that person out. So they don't always register it that way. In some cases, they're registering it as, I still feel like I have to run. But the emotions of it are very loving, very hot, very warm, very happiness oriented. Also a feeling of, but I can't allow myself. So we were kind of just touching on that with this Ace of Wands here. It does have that feeling of not allowing yourself to have it, not shutting your emotions down. So we've got the Ace of Wands here. We've got the Ace of Cups here. And we have the King of Cups. So if the Ace of Cups is shutting down that emotion, the King of Cups feels like really kind of moving to a place where you won't allow that emotion to impact you. Getting to a place where you're able to kind of cover up what the impact is of the emotions on you, where you're able to kind of move away from it entirely. There is a feeling that they need to jump in and do something different, but this is where you start to see, if you've been seeing vulnerability from them here in the recent past, I feel like you might start to see a little bit of breaking away and kind of breaking back into some older patterns that may have had them hiding, or doing a little bit more running, or jumping into something else. And it's got that sense of, I'm jumping into something else to make sure that I can still have some control over my situation. There's a strong sense of them wanting to have control over their situation, but feeling like they can't ever really test this out with regard to anything that is associated with you. Like, they don't want to make the big mistake in front of you, but they still have to figure out how to get these training wheels off. And that, I swear, is what wants to come into the reading. It's, I got to figure out how to get these training wheels off, but I can't show you where the weaknesses are. You know, it's got a feeling of that with the Fool card coming out. But with this Ace of Wands really has like a self-destructive streak. And it feels like a self-destructive streak a mile wide, where they turn off the emotions. So be aware of that. It doesn't mean the emotion isn't in there, but it does mean that it kind of gets shut down for the purposes of that same way that I had you using this King of Cups to feel out your emotions and how you appear to others. Like, they may have that same egoistic feel that I need to appear a certain way, and so that's why I'm shutting things down. So it's remember, this is a person who's progressing in baby steps, and you may also be progressing in smaller steps yourself. So this is kind of that opportunity for both of you to get a little bit of a breather and think about what the next round might look like. Because with the inevitability of that, it looks like you are going to have to figure out how to compose yourself for that next round. Okay, so 10 of Swords. This is all about that old pain, all about that ancient pain. So both of you have a tendency to create little bit of concern within one another. You trigger one another. You create overthinking and a tendency to get real concerned and worry in places where maybe it doesn't even make sense. So we see that here. We see that in the Knight of Swords in the reverse. There's a lot of internal strife. So that's in that Five of Swords that I just flipped over there too. But with the Knight of Swords, it's the fear that makes them run away and makes them feel like they have to run away. makes them, it's that both the fear that makes them kind of run away up the basement stairs in the dark when they feel like something is chasing them, and that same fear that makes them have to turn back around and make sure that you're still chasing them, the fear that you might actually have found something else to do. So it's like they feel like they have to shut their emotion off to you, but they don't really want you to shut your emotion back off to them. And with this Ten of Swords, that's that association with that ancient pain. You know, we've seen that they make a connection to the ways that you've made them feel better includes association with this ancient pain. It includes that, even though you trigger them with regard to that ancient pain. That's what it makes, that's what it feels like they can't stop. They can't stop coming back and trying to check to see if the stove is still hot, you know, that sort of thing. So we have the Queen of Cups in the reverse. It's that sense of triggering once again, and it's that sense of knowing that it's happening, knowing that they're doing it. We've got the Judgment card that comes out there a little bit. Before I get you an Oracle card, though, I just want to point out that this is a pattern that we have seen play out here a couple of times. We've seen it play out with this person. The emotions remain very similar. But what I will say is a little bit different is that each time they come forward and sort of play out this process, they are a little bit more, not necessarily well thought out, because it's not so much the thinking that is changing or improving within them, but it seems like they are a little bit more emotionally well thought out. So it feels like they are slightly more emotional intelligent. They're gaining some lessons. They're gaining some progress in times that they're not thinking very much, or it doesn't seem like they're thinking very much about it. So now to get you an Oracle card, and this will just be an Oracle card of advice, something that you can add on to this reading and have it be, you know, words to grow on. A little bit more to grow on. What just fell? Let's see here. Oh, everything fell face down. This deck doesn't necessarily seem like it wants to talk right away, but it also feels like it may have some of the best pearls of wisdom in it. When I pulled it out, I kind of realized I don't use this one very often. It's not on my website where I'm selling, you know, some of the decks that I have historically used and just don't use them very much anymore. Because I feel like it still needs to be in the mix. When it wants to be used, it really is the right deck for the job. Let's see what we've got here. Goddess of the Moon. Okay. I'll set this one back down. So what I'm especially getting from this is kind of a reflection of this Moon card. So we have the Moon card that came out up here. And it referred to a situation where, you know, you're making information or they're making decisions with less information than maybe would be ideal or maybe would be comfortable. The Goddess of the Moon is that confidence that allows you to kind of go into that and feel like it's going to be okay to do that. It's also that same energy that we saw before it, with the Five of Cups in the reverse, that feeling of I'm out in the water after the sun has gone down, and where I might have been afraid to go out into the water after sunset, already being out here, it kind of feels a little bit more comfortable. That comfort is that same comfort that I'm feeling with the Goddess of the Moon that helps you to make those decisions with less information. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. This extended really kind of got a little bit more into their emotions around the situation. There's a lot of love that they have for you, but in some cases they're not even letting that love be seen by themselves. There's a cycle that has to play out here and a lot of learning that's happening. But the cool thing is the learning is happening, even if it feels like it's happening relatively slowly and it seems like these are elements of the cycle that we've seen before. You have seen it. And the thing is, there's a lot more awareness of it than there has historically been. So I think each time we have the cycle, we see a little bit more awareness of kind of what's going on, and still a lot of, difficulty articulating some of the emotions around it. So hopefully we start to see a little bit more start to blossom out for you. But I get the feeling that kind of it will as we get into 2024, and this is the energy that helps to get you ready for it. So tomorrow or the next day, in the next couple days, we're going to get into where this year, where this upcoming year is headed, and just kind of what is in the energy for you overall, what sort of soulmate energy is coming in, but just also what sort of energy is happening for you. I feel like we'll get into that here next. But thank you so much for being here with me for this, for everything, for this whole time that I've been out here on YouTube, for this whole experience. It's been really magical and really amazing, and I truly cannot thank you guys enough or tell you enough how much I love you for being just exactly the people that you have been, and exactly, I love the way that you are wonderful to one another, even out on social media where, yeah, I guess sometimes we see people trolling around and being kind of negative. We see a lot of positivity coming out of this group, and I really just think that's a beautiful thing. So I wanted to say thank you for that too. And thank you for really just the overall entire experience. Like I said, I came out here to try and catch a handful of people that I felt like needed the message and try to touch more than one person at once. And what it's turned into is something quite larger than I ever anticipated or even guessed. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you again in tomorrow's reading.